Croc for the PS1 is a really good platforming game developed by Argonaut Software. I went into this game with very low expectations because I made the mistake of taking GameSpot's review of it seriously, who gave the game a porous 4.2 out of 10. Anything less than a 6, and I think you're selling this game short. I was pleasantly surprised with my experience playing this incredibly cute and challenging game. Croc reminds me of that woman you meet in the bar who doesn't want to talk too much. That woman who doesn't want to hear your life story or ask the question, so what do you do? Yes, you guessed it. Croc reminds me of a cum dumpster. The reason I say all of this is because Croc really doesn't have much of a story, and that is done on purpose. The game throws you in after a very short little cutscene, and the fun begins almost right away. The game's plot is as simple as you'd expect coming from a colorful 90s platforming game. The king of the Gobbos, which are these little creatures that look like hush puppies from Long John Silver's, notices a basket floating in a lake, and that basket contains a baby crocodile who is, you guessed it, the main character of the game. The Gobbos take Croc in and raise him to become one of their own. Eventually, Croc outgrows the Gobbos, then the bad guy comes in and invades Gobbos Island with his demons and imprisons many of the Gobbos, including their king, and that is where Croc sets off to rescue everyone. While the story doesn't stand out, I find that Croc himself does. It's clear that from just looking at the game that Croc was marketed to become a mascot character to rival the likes of Mario and Sonic. It seemed to be a big trend ever since Sonic hit the scene in the early 90s that every game developer needed to have a mascot character, a flagship product, if you will. Because of this, the developers for Croc made sure to make him as likable as humanly possible, and I think they did a good job in this regard. I wouldn't normally use this word, but damn it, Croc just looks so adorable. I mean, just look at him. Most of the complaints I hear about this game are the controls, and I digress. The controls are certainly nothing to shake a stick at. They're no good, but they're not so bad to the point where you can't beat the game. I was able to beat this game in 4 days. There was a lot of frustration. There were a lot of F-bombs. My voice was, it almost broke glass, but I ended up beating it, and sometimes you'll slip off of ledges, and it can be very annoying. The depth perception in this game can be very tricky. It can mind fuck you. It can betray you sometimes. Sometimes you think you can make a jump, and you find out that just isn't the case. But I don't think we should over-dramatize the controls for a platforming game that came out in the 90s, okay? Technology was limited in the 90s. The sensitivity of the analog stick was different back then. It was still in its birth stages. Analog was a new thing back then. In terms of gameplay, it's your traditional platforming game, but with the added challenge of a 3D environment. White crystals litter the game worlds, and by collecting 100 of them, you gain an extra life. But this is a surprising challenge, as whenever you are hit by an enemy, you will lose them all, Sonic the Hedgehog style, and only have a brief moment to grab as many of them back as possible. Now, frustratingly, the enemies you'll find wandering about the place will respawn quite quickly after you kill them by either tail swiping them into the next realm or bouncing on their heads with your stomp attack. Killing them offers no benefit to you, however, as all it will do is get rid of them for around 10 seconds before they'll return with a puff of smoke. One of the most annoying enemies is a worm that crawls about beneath the earth. There are quite a few bosses in the game, one every 5 levels or so, but they were only really difficult based on the dodgy camera and tank controls. Mostly they consisted of hapless creatures who had been turned evil by the Baron guy, such as a duck or a ladybird. Generally, they weren't much of a challenge, but I did enjoy the way in which each boss fight was different and quite often quirky. The ladybird fight, for example, was set in an enormous, multicolored boxing ring where the aim was to dodge attacks, knock Flibby over, then jump on her stomach to cause some damage. A little bit of fun like this is what makes Croc Legend of the Gobbos a good game, and I did enjoy its lighthearted, cutesy approach to everything. As well as progressing through the levels by smashing open crates, grabbing crystals, and killing enemies, you'll have to navigate the levels. This is easier said than done because the controls and camera angle in this game are by far your worst enemies. Now, frequently I found myself running into walls or mistiming jumps and falling into the black abyss or pits of lava. Often when you hit a wall, it's very difficult to turn around, never mind see where you are going, and in a game where expert control of where you're running and jumping is expected, it really cranks up the difficulty level. You're not just dealing with the stationary platforms either, and often you'll be trying to time your jumps onto moving or breakable platforms where lingering a second too long could result in your death. At times, it was easier to just run ahead and avoid all the intricacies of the game, as the likelihood for death was just too high, and this is a surefire way of missing out on all of the bonuses that this game had to offer. Bonus levels, for example, exist on every level in the form of doors you may only open with 5 colored crystals. These colored crystals are scattered about the levels and can be found disguised as white crystals, hidden in chests, or just sitting out in the open through usually in areas that are not part of the linear level progression. What this game does well is its free roaming style of play, as usually platforms of this area were very linear. In Croc Legend of the Gobbos, you will automatically have access to different areas such as underground caverns that can be accessed by stomping on the tops of wells, or other top ground areas that can be accessed through doors. Usually you can bypass these places and head straight for the dong, which you hit to end the level, but by doing this you miss out on the other side missions of the game, saving the Gobbos. Croc Legend of the Gobbos is a very enjoyable game for that certain kind of gamer. Certainly its controls and camera angles kind of let it down here. There's quite a bit going on if you dig under the surface, and I enjoyed the range of obstacles I encountered, such as platforms that you have to control yourself, buttons to jump on, jelly to bounce off of, walls to climb, slopes to slide down, and those weird purple stretchy platforms that would grow and shrink continuously. It's all quite busy, but it's such a shame that this is all going on in such drab places, and some more detail would really have brought the theme's world to life. As it stands, it is very much a case of forest, green-floored areas, desert, beige-floored areas, tundra, white-floored area with slippery bits, and so on. The camera is a real nightmare to control and can cause a huge amount of frustration to the point where I thought about putting the game down several times, but I was able to slug through it, to fight through it, and to beat it. Despite everything, I did enjoy replaying Croc Legend of the Gobbos, and even though it's pretty dated, I can see why it became so popular. It's quirky, it's cute, and full of innocent fun to be had, yet providing enough challenge to appeal to older or more accomplished gamers. It may not be in the league of Sonic, Crash, Mario, Rayman, or Spyro, but it's still a good old classic that few can forget. Thanks for watching, please subscribe, and goodbye, my friends.